Today, we're doing something a little bit different. We aren't just looking back at a football match. Nope, we're unpacking a fascinating psychological study of pressure, legacy, and raw human emotion, all playing out on the biggest stage imaginable. We're winding the clock back to the 2008 Champions League Final. I want you to picture this scene. A team has just won the most prestigious prize in European club football. The players are erupting in sheer ecstasy, right? They're sprinting across the pitch, they're screaming into the night sky. But their undisputed star, the man who brought them there, he isn't running. Actually, he's collapsed face down on the soggy turf, sobbing uncontrollably. Today, we're going to explore the anatomy of this exact moment and answer the ultimate question. Why was the world's best player sobbing during his greatest triumph? Section 1, The Quest for Immortality. A historically dominant season. Okay, let's dive into this. To really understand those tears at the end, we have to wind the clock back a bit and look at the sheer undeniable dominance of Cristiano Ronaldo leading up to May 2008. Let's talk about this staggering number for a second. 41. That is the number of goals Cristiano Ronaldo scored across all competitions that season. I mean, we're looking at one of the most statistically dominant individual seasons in modern football history. He wasn't just playing well, he was totally redefining what a forward could do in the modern English game.
So you got to understand, this final wasn't just another game. It was the absolute zenith. It was the first ever all-English Champions League final. Manchester United going up against a deeply resilient, fiercely competitive Chelsea side. For Ronaldo, this match was the final hurdle. Winning here wouldn't just mean adding another trophy to the cabinet, it meant absolute footballing immortality. It was the ultimate test for his legacy. Section 2. Battle in the Rain. Treacherous conditions in Moscow. Let's set the scene, because the environment of that night really builds the tension. They weren't playing on a pristine, sun-drenched afternoon. This was the Luzhniki Stadium in Moscow. The atmosphere was heavy, cold, and wet. The match kicked off under a relentless heavy downpour, turning the pitch into this slick, treacherous surface. And the narrative arc of this match, an absolute roller coaster. We get an opening breakthrough, which we'll talk about in just a second, but then, right before halftime, Chelsea fights back and equalizes through Frank Lampard. The tension just skyrockets. The match drags past the standard 90 minutes into a grueling, incredibly physical extra time, where every single heavy step on that wet turf takes a massive toll. But let's zoom in on that 26-minute breakthrough, because it perfectly encapsulates Ronaldo's athletic brilliance. Wes Brown floats a delicate looping cross into the Chelsea penalty box. What happens next is just purely majestic. Showcasing this terrifying vertical leap built from years of relentless gym work, Ronaldo soars high above Chelsea's Michael Essien. It literally looks like he hung in the air for an impossible, gravity-defying second before powering a header right past Petr Čech. United takes the lead, and Ronaldo is in pure ecstasy, sprinting toward the roaring fans. Section 3. The ultimate lottery. Deciding the champion on penalties. However, as we know, that lead didn't hold. After an exhausting extra time where neither team could break the deadlock, the match shifted into a completely different psychological realm, a penalty shootout. The ultimate footballing lottery, played out under the cold Moscow midnight rain. Think about what a shootout actually is. Up to this point, a player like Ronaldo dictates the game, right? He uses his pace, his strength, his vision. But a penalty shootout abruptly strips away all of that control. It is an isolated, nerve-shredding duel. Section 4, a devastating miss, the weight of the moment. And this brings us to the most agonizing moment of the night for the Portuguese star. The weight of the entire season seemed to converge on the single kick. Ronaldo steps up to take United's third penalty. Watch the mechanics of this tragedy unfold. First, the deliberate approach. Then, his trademark stutter step, a calculated move designed to trick the goalkeeper into committing early. But Petr Čech doesn't bite. He stands his ground. He anticipates the movement perfectly, diving sharply to his right, and parries the shot away. The stadium collectively gasps. The silence from the United fans is deafening. Ronaldo walks the agonizing distance back to the center circle, completely devastated. The image is striking. He hides his face in his jersey, his own tears mixing with the pouring rain. I mean, put yourself in his shoes for a moment. You've scored 41 goals, you've carried your team to the brink of immortality, and now you're standing in the center circle, watching the rainfall, entirely consumed by the feeling that you are the reason it's all going to slip away. The pressure of feeling that your own failure might ruin an entire historic season is almost unimaginable. Would his historic season end in ultimate heartbreak? Section 5. Sudden death. The lifeline.
The shootout marches on, completely out of his hands, moving past the standard 5 kicks and into the most ruthless phase of any sport, the sudden death phase. The swings of fate here are incredibly wild. Chelsea captain John Terry steps up. If he scores, Chelsea wins the Champions League. But fate intervenes. Terry slips on the treacherous wet turf, sending his shot wide. A massive lifeline is thrown to Manchester United. And then, just moments later, United's goalkeeper Edwin van der Sar dives and brilliantly saves Nicolas Anelka's penalty. In the blink of an eye, the narrative flips. Manchester United secures the European crown.
Section 6, the weight of relief, the psychological aftermath. Which brings us full circle, back to the psychological aftermath of the whistleblowing. The contrast in human emotion in this single moment is simply incredible. And this brilliantly illustrates the two very different ways humans process the end of immense stress. On one hand, you have his teammates erupting into wild, unbridled celebration, chasing Van der Sar across the pitch in pure joy. And then you have Ronaldo, doing something completely different, collapsed face down on the soggy turf near the halfway line, sobbing uncontrollably. So why does this matter? What should you take away from this explainer? Well, those tears weren't just joy. They were the physical manifestation of the burden of greatness. He was overwhelmed by a wave of pure relief. The immense, suffocating pressure he had carried on his young shoulders all season, and especially during that penalty shootout, had finally broken loose. In that moment, he was a European champion. He was the conqueror of the continent and the undisputed spearhead of the best team on the planet. But he was also completely emotionally spent. It leaves us with a fascinating thought to ponder. As we look at the icons of our sports, we really have to ask ourselves, does reaching absolute footballing immortality always require carrying the agonizing weight of the world? It's a heavy price for greatness, for sure. But as the rain in Moscow showed us, it's a price the legends are willing to pay. Thanks for joining me